Tell me your story.
How did it all start? Do you remember?
Oh, now what happened? How did it stop?
This is Small Business Origins.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Small Business Origins. You're tuned in to our nationwide search. We're looking for entrepreneurs with a story to tell. And joining us in the studio today from Costa Rica, we have an entrepreneur that wants to do just that. Joining me on the show is Richard Blank. He's with Costa Rica's call center. Richard, welcome to the show.
Hey, John Kelly. So happy to be with you and your audience today. Can't wait to share some ideas with your small business origins and be able to shatter some misconceptions in regards to call centers, telemarketers, and what Hollywood did to glamorize it.
Heck yeah, man. I can't wait to hop into it either, but we always start this show out with an icebreaker question. So today's icebreaker question is, what song could you listen to all day?
In Excess, Suicide Blonde. Don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, I have not heard that one. I'll have to check it out after the show. Man, I like some old school Drift Away, Dobie Gray. One of my favorite songs, man. I grew up a long time just jamming out to some old music with my hippie parents, and it has not left me. I like some of the new school stuff, but I can't lie, man. You can't beat the old school way, man. They just paved the way for all of us, and it's music. It's good music. Takes talent to make it, and I appreciate it. And Dobie Gray, even the Uncle Kracker version that was redone with Dobie Gray on it, just absolutely love that song. I could listen to it all day, every day.
Things that get you motivated, almost like Rocky's Eye of the Tiger. You find that one song, all you need.
That's it, man. But we're here to talk about you. So let's just hop into it. Who is Richard Blank? Where'd you come from? What is your origin story?
Ooh, my story begins in Northeast Philadelphia. I'm a very proud graduate of the Abington High School, and unlike some of my friends that went to Ivy League and were under a lot of pressure with opinions and career expectations, I decided to double down on my favorite class, which was Spanish. I was a Spanish communication major at Arizona. And then when I was 27 years old, I had a 1 in a million opportunity to move to Costa Rica and work at my friend's call center for just a couple months. Well, if you can get past your parents' guilt and realize there's certain barn doors that are open, you take it. And 2 months turned into 4 years of learning the business from the inside out, not as a C-level executive. And then in my mid-30s, I threw my hat in the ring and I had some maturity and impulse control and some capital. And little did I know, we just celebrated our 15th year in business. And so it's been a great ride of twists and turns, but I tell you what, fortune favors the brave. And if you do your due diligence and your dedicated practice, and you believe that you can put your chest out there and your best foot forward, then by all means, I think you should drink life and I think you should go for it. You only get 100 years on this planet.
If you're lucky. That's right. So you left your parents. How much family did you have here in the States that you just, said, hey, I gotta go?
Well, it's all my family. And they live in Philadelphia and Colorado, Arizona. They're scattered. But how about this, my friend? When I was expected to study law or finance or economics, I kind of used my great-grandparents as an example. They came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century from Eastern Europe, moved to New York in the garment industry. Great-grandpa learned English. He ramped up a company. He took his chance and had his adventure. Just skipped a couple generations and I'm going south. And so really that was my strongest argument, that people are nomads. And if you have a vision quest, if you have a spiritual life journey and a certain calling, I think you should be true to yourself and you should follow this certain energy that you have, this wind that's on your back. And for me, as long as my intentions were honorable and I was getting positive reinforcement, because Spanish was my second language. And when you saw that commitment and how excited I was and getting second plates of food and business referrals, it was a momentum that I couldn't stop. And if people don't understand it and they haven't learned that language or decided to move abroad, what sort of advice can they give? Only fearful advice, because they don't understand it. And so sometimes you have to have a leap of faith. And if you do it in certain steps and checkpoints, there's no reason why you can't continue and have a very good run.
Yeah. I mean, and the cool part is when you have success like that, I can only imagine that now you're in a place where family can fly to visit you or you can fly to visit them. So it's not like you're just totally leaving them out in the dark. you're coming back. You're just making a name for yourself somewhere else.
My good friend, I'm a Renaissance man. And from time to time, someone must leave a castle to slay a dragon and become a prince. It's the only way. And if somebody influences you not to get on a roller coaster, then you just don't know what it's like to really live life. And so a lot of it is trial and error, and there is some guidance there. But, I really preferred more of a balancing of a bike and then letting go, because the worst thing somebody could do is put training wheels on you and just, oversee what you're doing your whole life. There's really no self-growth from that and experimentation. And as I say, I think all of us have a certain place. It doesn't have to be in a call center doing telemarketing. I never wanted to do this. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a fireman just like you. I think they're the greatest heroes in the world. But it just so happens that there were certain decisions that I made in regards to my education that allowed me this sort of flexibility to have these sort of options. And one of them was to move abroad and to be a guest in another country and to show the respect. The fact that I have spent the time to properly learn your language, it really made this sort of transition that much easier compared to being a loud foreigner that has wild expectations and limited patience. And that's why you hear about terrible experiences. And so, when you travel the world or you go to these other countries, the most important thing is to be humble and to keep a very big open mind and to leave all that nonsense that you have at home, because the things that make you a superstar in Philadelphia really don't have any sort of meaning here. It really just boils down to your true essence. And if you're a good person, you like to click your heels and enjoy your day, there's no reason why you can't have an amazing experience when you're traveling.
Yeah, I love what you said about, the difference between people who kind of go that path and make those decisions based on jobs they can have here, kind of like what I went down with becoming a firefighter. I'm working for somebody, even though it's the taxpayer, I'm still working for someone. But when you make that leap and you go into entrepreneurship, it's a story we talk about on this show quite often, where it's so different having to cut your own path and figure out the way that you're going to go, make those mistakes. It really does make you into a different person. And then you add on top of that, I'm just trying to imagine going to another country, somewhere else with a different culture, like you said, a different language. And so now you're having to cut your own path down a level of entrepreneurship you hadn't done prior.
Sure.
And not only that, you're doing it in a place where, you may feel uncomfortable. You may feel right at home. I'm not sure. But either way, you're not in the US. You're in a totally different area. It's something that you had to get used to. So how different was that? Was there much culture shock, or how quick did you get into the groove there and kind of feel at home?
Well, it's quite simple, John. Once again, I can't tell you how much I was a guest here. And so I was not at a home court advantage. And so my trunk of a tree needed some branches and roots. And my ego is fine. And when I found the right people to surround my company, such as human resources directors, attorneys, accountants, supervisors, and chief technical officers, even the head of security, these are pros, these are specialists. I know what I can do. And as long as I can focus on my area and allowing other people and to delegate so they're capable of growing, it made it easy. A lot of it was learning the labor laws and following rules and not doing shortcuts. But let me explain something. And this is how I was able to succeed. My grandmother told me that if I don't pay for something in cash, you just don't buy it. I want to sleep at night and I don't want to overextend myself. And so when I started my company 15 years ago, what I did was I was working out of my home. I launched the website, but I was renting a turnkey station at a blended center, kind of like a glorified internet cafe. There was no privacy, but there was reliability, security. It's just an open floor plan. And so I was able to scale accordingly, pay for the station, the benefits, the salary, and make my margin. It's not glamorous. It's not fancy dancy, but it was working. And I could do it to where I could build that capital and not worry about, as I mentioned, these expenses that come up that I just wasn't a large enough company. So after a couple of years of paying a la carte and top price, I saved enough money and had enough stable clients at 60 seats to then rent space. And I was buying used equipment and used furniture. I wasn't buying used underwear, but there are certain things you can get for pennies on a dollar. And there is a rotation of call centers and businesses that go out of business. So I'm grabbing almost brand new Dells for a fraction of the cost. So I was able to scale that way. And I was there for about 6 years. And when I saved enough money and I was busting out of this location, we finally purchased property and built out where I'm currently now, 300 seats. And it's slow and steady. It's the tortoise, not the hare. And as long as I had very responsible checkpoints to make sure that I had enough savings to pay for any sort of setbacks, hiccups, and liquidations and salaries and benefits, that's a responsible business owner. I can't gamble on my employees' salaries if something's coming in or not. That's irresponsible. And so leaders eat last. I had to make sure that all of my responsibilities were done first before I started buying jukeboxes and pinball machines and other toys. And so act your wage. There are certain industries like myself that don't need a fancy showroom. It needs to be aesthetically nice and pleasing for people. But I didn't need to have the penthouse suite. Clients don't come here. The agents do. And so I'd rather readjust those sort of costs into higher salaries, more stability, or even just a greater work environment for the agent, not for the occasionally visiting client. And so that's how I was able to do it, my friend. There's no cracked code and there's no shortcut. You have to grind it out like Chuck Wepner did with Ali for 15 rounds. You must go the distance. That would be my firm advice for your amazing audience today.
It's great advice. I especially love, it sounds like you like to read, and Leaders Eat Last is something that I am still in the middle of. I'm using my Audible subscription to make sure that I stay caught up on some books, because I don't like to physically hold it in my hands and read, but I do love to listen. Mm-hmm. That's why I like podcasting. And Leaders Eat Last is something that I never knew why I did it, but I had always subscribed to that, especially at the fire station as a lieutenant. My guys eat first. So my driver, operator, my rookie, my firefighter, they know that when dinner's ready, you don't stand behind LT. You wait, or you stand in front of LT and you make that plate, and then you go sit down and eat so that I can eat, and it's something that a lot of people who come in and work for you or the department, which they don't work for me, they don't work for the department, they work for the citizen. But when they come in, they have a hard time with that because they think out of respect that they should put the leader first. And the point is, just as you said, we are servants. And so it should be our job to put our people first and serve them first, make sure that they're taken care of before we worry about our own needs. And I liken it to being a parent, which is, obviously something I am as well. And that's just how it kind of has always rolled for me. And then when I saw that book, I was like, man, this is it. Like, this is a leadership principle. It's something that I've always subscribed to since the first servant leadership course that I took when I was, 13 years old in a youth group at church and that kind of stuff. Now, I do want to ask a personal question just because it's something that you kind of alluded to before we started recording. And you said that when you left, you didn't have a girlfriend or a wife that you left here in the States. You found love there in Costa Rica and then got married. Is that correct?
100% correct. Grace Bourbon and I have been together 23 years. I might be the owner. She's the boss. And without her, we would have never been able to grow as large as we did. But she's a local Costa Rican girl from in the mountains, in the rainforest, from a small little town. And so imagine those two worlds coming together. And so it's been a whirlwind romance that's just been amazing. And I just count my blessings every day, my good friend. I got very lucky.
I love the story, man. I think it's awesome to go somewhere else and be that outsider, and then now you're 100% tied in. You've been there for years. You've been doing this thing. You own a company there. You found love there. You got married, all of that stuff. It is a great romantic story. Absolutely. Now, I mean, we could just hop.
We also pay it forward. It's not about the money I make, my friend. It's about how many families I'm feeding, right? And how many leaders I'm producing. And it's just, You were mentioning about breaking bread earlier. Sorry to interrupt this guy. I know we're moving quick, but
No, all
people
good.
work with me. No one ever works for me. I believe in synergy. I believe in circles. And I also believe in the sanctity of a meal together, breaking fast, feeding ourselves, making ourselves stronger. Forget who eats first or second or last. It doesn't matter. The fact that we're breaking bread together, I love that sort of stuff. It's imperative for me. When you have leverage, when you are a leader, you can hire, fire, make or break somebody. I prefer the former. I like knowing people's names. I like giving them their dignity. I'm just not going to call you champ, John. I'm going to tell you last Thursday when you saved that kitten out of the tree, that was the greatest thing ever as a fireman. And so I'm giving you specifics on why you're the best, not just patting you on the shoulder and moving on. And so leaders remember small details about you, or they dress in case your mother shows up so I can go downstairs and thank her for raising such a fine young man who's been with me for 3 years. And John has raised the ranks. He started off as an agent and now he's a floor manager, and he did it through merit, through hitting metrics and being the top producer consistently, showing up to work on time, pen at the ready. Why? It's not for me. It's to earn the respect of his coworkers. Because how can I promote somebody if other people don't want to promote that individual? And so that's how we do it here. And I could care less how old you are or what you've been doing. If you show me some grit, some vigor, and you have enough guts to knock on my door and tell me something like Machiavelli's The Prince so we can make our castle stronger, then you're a leader. And you're the person that I want to promote like crazy. And that's why I do this, man. I don't do it for the money. Money's fine. I have enough dinners to eat the rest of my life. I'm at a certain point where the jewels have lost its luster. And I'm really looking to see where I can crack some codes with people so they become more self-reliant, more self-confident, right? I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing in our positions? And that's why I can't admire you enough. What you're doing is, as I say, it's chivalry. You are literally, not saying your life is not important. It is the most important. You're a family man. You're a community man. But you are so brave to be the first one to run into some place with no judgment. And you're there just to save and to assist and be there during the worst days of people's lives. And you sometimes take that because you see things. But then again, who's going to do this? It has to be people like you. You're the one who steps up to the plate to do this. You can handle this. And I think that a lot of people see being a fireman as easy, or you see the glamour side of it. I mean, it's wickedly cool. But then again, there's a certain side that really takes a foundation in order to do it. And that's why, as I say before, I have the utmost respect for your profession and those that work with you.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. Of course, none of us are here because we want the thanks or we want a whole bunch of money or to get rich. That's for sure. We're here because it's just a great job. It's the greatest job in the world because you get to serve some of the greatest people in the world.
That's right.
And sometimes, those people may not be so deserving of the great care that they do get just because of the life choices they've made. But it's something we can look past to say that everyone deserves that, regardless of the life choices that they've made. So It's definitely just, for me, something I enjoy. It doesn't feel like work when I have to go in. I'm excited to go in. And then on the other side, doing a podcast like this gives me the opportunity to continue to serve people just in a different manner from a different perspective. I get to do a lot of publicity for companies that need it, or companies like yours that may be successful and not necessarily need more attention to them or more clients to come to them. Of course, we always need clients, right? But you may be super successful. I've had $1 million investments that have investors that have come on here and talked and told their story. And it's like, if it's small business origins, then why are you talking to a venture capitalist? Well, because A, there's lessons to learn there. And B, there's things that they still want to get out, stories they still want to tell about their company or about their investments. So I am always excited to talk to somebody like yourself. And speaking of that, let's hop into it. I mean, exactly what you said, running a telemarketing firm, there's obviously going to be a lot of negativity that has surrounded you and your business and the market that you're in. If it wasn't for the marketing side of things and making those cold calls and doing sales like I'm used to, then I would absolutely probably hate you instead of wanting to have you on my show. But seeing it from the other side and knowing that these phone calls are being made for a reason, to make a living, to feed people, to put jobs out there for others, I think that what you do is important. But who can lie and say that they really enjoy it when they get that spam call and somebody's calling them to solicit them or sell something to them? I think all of us have kind of grown to hate that. So let's just start with exactly what it is that you do and what it is that you don't do as far as those things are concerned, where the good and the bad is kind of mixed, and some people's perceptions may be bad, but you can change our minds on that.
Not a problem at all. In fact, from an educated point of view, hopefully your audience can make a decision. Outbound prospecting is a means to an end, but most people see it as a grind, a transitional job, or look down upon it. They don't understand that it's the art of speech. There's beautiful rhetoric that is out there. You can choose very choice semantics and really pack a punch. In fact, they say that the pen is stronger than the sword. And so with me here, I'm in a very strict Catholic country, John, so we don't compromise people's ethics, values, or morals. There's 5 campaigns that will never enter my call center. We don't do sports books, casinos, stocks, pharmacies, or sweepstakes. And no matter what Hollywood does by glamorizing the Wolf of Wall Street, Glengarry Glen Ross, the Prime Gig, you name it, Boiler Room. A lot of people do make and receive calls for companies in order to retain a client, to get an upsell, a referral, or possibly an exit interview, because most companies today are actually wanting to do omni-channel non-voice support like chat and emails. It's cost effective, but you can lose people on that, and temperatures rise, and it's latent, and there's a lot of misconceptions there. So my agents really focus on soft skills, and I'd rather have them be paintings and not a print. And they have to concentrate on hedging. I don't want ums, ahs, and okays. I can run through some soft skills to not compromise ethics. I think when you call a company, the first thing you should do is use your anonymity, not for the whole call, that's shady. But if the first thing I'm going to do is, hey, how's Small Business Origins doing today? I'm going to ask how your company is doing. And naturally, the gatekeeper is going to say it's fine. It's going to drop their defense from a 10 to at least a 6. And then after the pleasantries, I'm going to give them a positive escalation. For when I get transferred to you, I'm going to let them know how helpful they were, how much they assisted me. And so prior to even introducing myself to a business owner, I'm going to give the gift of mentioning their coworker being amazing, who also gave me the pass to pitch to go to the decision maker. And so we also, once again, use military alphabet, and there's clarification questions we ask. We love asking open-ended questions. I believe in name drops for transitional sentences, and you pause before names and numbers. That's for emphasis. Personal pronouns such as are and your is a great way non-verbally to get people's attention. 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And, a lot of the times people are afraid to even pronounce someone's exotic name or spelling. And so that military alphabet is key. So A, you pronounce it correctly, especially since English is second language. You're using Latino vowels, so you need to adjust that phonetically. And secondly, emails don't bounce back. Some people have served in the military. And so when you're doing that alphabet, there's another Me Too technique where you can anchor with them. Another Me Too is if a dog is barking, you can inadvertently and passive aggressively let you know you love dogs, but what's the breed, what's its name, and how old's your puppy? You'll understand the dog is barking and I can't hear you. And so instead of being rude and cutting you off, there's ways to readjust tones so we avoid rabbit holes. We can have longer conversations, larger conversion ratios. And this is not lying. All I'm doing is mentioning your assistant, saying the name of your company, being very attentive in regards to my listening by asking open-ended questions, and concluding the call with some serious meeting minutes. And if I'm going to leave you a voicemail or do an email template, why don't I just take the time to look at your LinkedIn profile or your website. So I can custom make it now. So I can talk about you being a fireman and how much you love Texas football. And if you call me, talk about my pinball machines. My man, it's yours to lose. Credit card at the ready. I'll give you 5 minutes. And that's how you buy time. And that's how you start normal relationships with people. And if you can have these romantic deaths to where you name drop them 3 times, do a company name spike and try to do a positive escalation, but they still hang up on you, do that 100 times a day. You'll get some amazing muscle memory. So when you finally do get in the ring with Ali, you will be ready. Your game will be tight. Your timing will be great. You'll be able to bite the apple when you're juggling. And then you'll also find those other things in a spontaneous way to be able to throw into the conversation just to make it more alive, more lucid. And that's what I do here. It's not what you see in the movies. These are relationship building. And this is rapport building. And it's a chance, once again, to represent your company in the best light. And I hope that maybe sheds some light in regards to our industry and what we do.
Cold calling is something that I personally despise doing.
Ooh.
I don't like it. It's uncomfortable for me, which I know has to be weird because someone like you who understands communication so well, I'm sure that you understand that just doing this podcast takes someone who's outgoing enough that they can talk, that they could sell. And it's not that I can't, because I absolutely love meeting new people, talking to them. And usually once I have a conversation with someone, it does go well, and it does turn into, at the very least, some sort of relationship that I can utilize, even if it isn't for a sale currently where we're at. It's still going to lead me down the path that's going to get me sales at some point. I always like to put relationships before money, because I believe that if you can just connect with someone, then the money is going to naturally follow at some point. You don't always have to be so hardcore selling, but obviously there is a huge place for that. I just don't feel like it's me. I don't like to be that guy that's doing it. I respect the heck out of anyone who's doing it. I think everything you just told me is such a great game plan for someone who is in this role. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be in business for 15 years if you had a bad game plan you were bringing to me. So I do love that. And I guess my question on behalf of our audience is, what is it exactly that you are selling yourself? When I call and I'm talking to Costa Rica's call centers and I say, hey, I'm a business, I'm looking for more leads, then what is it that I can expect to get from you as a service offering? Or is that even the reason that a potential client should be calling you?
Mm-hmm. Before I address that, and there's a lot of walking backwards because I need to make sure that they qualify. Let me give you an example. Do you remember the movie Glengarry Glen Ross?
I don't. That may have been slightly before my time. I'm 34.
You got Alec Baldwin as Blake, who gives you the ABC. Jack Lemmon's in it, Al Pacino, some great actors. But there's 2 different types of salesmen. You got the 3 or 4 guys in the office that are cold calling with the rain and getting yelled at during a training session and telling them that coffee is for closers. Where's Ricky Romano? He's not at the meeting. Why? He's closing, but not your type of closing. He wasn't on the phone telemarketing. He was sitting at a bar talking to some guy about life. Let me put to you this way. If somebody walks on a lot and they see somebody like myself in a suit, I'm the cliche out of the movies. You're going to want to hear me pitch and laugh about it and take a photograph with me and say you met a salesman. But the person that's really going to educate somebody, not force a hand, which I don't do, but still, it's your way. You're the common man. You are that guy. You're the guy that can talk with somebody. This is just, it's really more of a mask. I do this because I'm a CEO of a call center and I like to dress like this. But in all reality, no one really sees me. It's really sight unseen. And so by making these calls, I never like to put a pen in someone's hand or use these psychological tricks because someone will resent it, or it's a one and a done. You won't get referrals and they'll want to do business with you. Just like your podcast, there's no money exchanged today. But after I watched multiple episodes of what you did, you and I communicated and shared ideas. That's closing. We closed on time. And so there's different mediums of, as you say, selling. But I think that people put such a stigma on it, and they almost seem like you're taking someone's $20 from them. And so that's the ugly side of it. And so if I can focus on a thesaurus and really choose certain vocabulary words that are flowery and flowing, if I can really allow people to ask me questions for clarification until I've exhausted it so much, it's only smoke. There's no more flames to that. You can put it out. And also, I'm going to use a great example. Remember when they say you see fire, you're supposed to stop, drop, and roll? Well, listen, if things are getting really bad on a conversation, stop what you're talking about, drop that terrible topic, and roll to something else. And so these are just soft skills. I mentioned about your superior public relations skills with the public, with the local firemen and the community. You need to be there to listen twice and speak one, to understand situations. That's selling. It's not like this in a store or stock. You didn't even have to sell yourself. You got promoted because of what you did. And so in my business, I get a lot of it from referrals. And so when people call me, okay, like you say, and they say, Richie, I'm out of my home. I do a real estate company. I sell insurance. I do construction. Give me 50 mediums, okay? And they say, what do? I don't have the time to make the phone calls, or I don't want to make the phone calls. Well, that's fine. I would ask them, what's your average talk time? So we can look at metrics, because I want to make sure if it's a 5-minute talk time, you're not making 12 calls an hour, because there's wrap-up time to that. You might be on an IVR. You speak to a secretary. You might be making 8 calls an hour, 8 contacts. So I got to give certain numbers for expectations. I got to see your list. I expect at least 4,000 unique numbers a month, so I don't get in trouble with the DNC or abuse certain phone numbers. I want to ask about email templates. I want to know if you've done it before. Have you tried it in India and the Philippines offshore compared to doing something near shore? Did you have a quality control department? Did they grade the calls with KPIs? Did you have access to recordings? Did you do any active coaching? Are you involved in any of this process? Don't just say, hey man, I'm going to send you a couple grand. Here's a list and give me some money. Well, it's the same thing with fire prevention. There's training to it. You got to make sure you're at the right place. You got to have the right equipment. You just can't expect things to work out perfectly. And so for me, what I try to do is not be a devil's advocate, but I will give you all of my experience and resources just to shed some light on what we can do for you. But I tell you what, my man, since I have internet redundancy, a backup generator for electricity, and immediate IT support, we rock. I got a brick and mortar, but people can still work at home, but that's not the point. I can put a list in a predictive dialer. I can have a dozen people listening to your calls, writing script with you. Not saying we're going to change the whole project, but there are little tweaks that we can do. Certain areas of the country we're calling, or maybe certain responses we're getting, or the rebuttal is terrible. Stop saying help on the phone. Use words like God assist and lend a hand. Things like that. And so these are these little adjustments where the tone is more assertive, John, compared to aggressive. That's a huge difference. And also my clients, I make suggestions. If you have a overzealous supervisor that likes to use profanity or write in bold cap or in red, or thinking that what you do in Chicago could work here, it may or may not. But this is a different culture, and we have to make sure you understand the labor laws and the Pura Vida lifestyle here. And so a lot of it is education. And I have no problem sharing with you the resources that we have here. I mean, Amazon is here. HP, Intel, and Oracle, they're here because of our proxemics to the United States. I'm on Mountain Time Zone. I'm a couple-hour direct flight out of Miami. And we have the most neutral English accent in Latin America, the best infrastructure. Our government here is exceptionally stable. It's the only democratic society in Central America. So they don't have a standing army. They put all that money into education. There's a 95% literacy rate. And say what you want. If somebody has a slight accent, to me, it still bears the mark of higher education. And if you do, it's like a beauty mark. And so I think more people are becoming more accustomed towards a Latino accent in the United States than they would an Asian or a Middle Eastern. And so that has given us some leverage in regards to growing our campaigns.
So is this, it sounds more like you said an educational experience.
Sure.
Is this kind of a consulting thing, or is it something I can totally outsource to you, or maybe a mixture of both depending on my needs?
Oh, you can outsource the same thing, but my brother, I bring you in my kitchen. You hang out at my house. And so I'm so proud of what was built and the fact that I am versed in this topic. And there's no real secrets that I'm giving you. Try to imitate what I do in a training class. I'll teach you. But it's really about accountability and the fact that I call the balls and the strikes with my clients. And you want to know something funny, and you'll agree with this. You judge character during chaos. And there is attrition in this industry. As I mentioned before, there are jumpers, and Amazon will hire you the next day. I'll lose people for natural attrition because of a scheduling conflict closer to their home, or their boyfriend or girlfriend works there, but it's never because of a walk of shame. But if something happens and Billy just quits on a Thursday, naturally I'll have some people that are ready to replace them. I'll call my client, let them know what happens, make the suggestions, because if we can manage through that little bump, then imagine what happens when things are aces, and it's in a wonderful relationship. And so, as I mentioned before, it's not because of duress. We invested in individuals. I don't want them to leave, but this is, it's an environment not for the faint of heart. Being on the phone, it's a very controlled environment. It might even seem monotonous at times. And so I try to continue, since English is their second language, I really want to emphasize that return on investment that they're getting in education. And that by learning a second language, John, is 10 times harder than any campaign I'd put them on. And the fact that I know their name and I want them to grow here, maybe they'll look at it more as a career like you did in your adventures. And so I just don't want people seeing this as fleeting. I think that if you can learn a second language and do it well, then you become exceptionally marketable. And my goal is to be the last boss that they ever have. It's a high goal, but I'm going for it.
So how do I become your customer? And what type of potential customer are you looking for?
Outbound lead generation, sales appointment setting, inbound customer support, or inbound back office and back office non-voice support. But you got to have your resources. I'll help you write a script, but you got to get me a list. And I'm not going to do anything gray area. I'm not going to be your fall guy. Just make sure you're doing things properly so we can have this sort of relationship. And if I do make suggestions to you, try to keep an open mind. Don't tell me you can make 20 calls an hour. There's someone in your office named Jasmine that can do it. This is my wheelhouse and not my first time at a rodeo. And I know you want to motivate me, but you also have to be with me on a level playing field. If not, off the bat, there is going to be some whacked out expectations and frustrations there. And the last thing we need is someone calling and grilling before you have your coffee in the morning.
That is for sure. Yeah. And I love that it's not just the telemarketing side of making cold calls. I mean, you're saying you offer customer support and you offer, the appointment setting. So are the services that you give to your customer ever pointed at finding those leads as well? Or is this something where I should come to you with my lead source already intact and say, these are the people I want you to contact on my behalf?
Okay. We have to follow the DNC. So if I were making my own list, I don't know how I'd be getting that scrubbed. And that's the most important thing. Okay. That's number one. I also love hot lead transfers because a lot of times people like to put appointments on a calendar or just let it go stale. But if something's hot, then, and especially during the onboarding ramping up stage, I've suggested to my clients to allow us to do a warm transfer, which means we stay on the line and we pass the call like a baton. But we also then get on mute without taking any sort of real sensitive information. I get to hear the player close. I get to hear that additional rapport building or that industry knowledge that we can use when we're prospecting. It's almost like a page or a squire to a knight. And so as long as the client is willing to invest in a process and willing to use my experience from my other verticals and my other experience and putting that on the table for them, there's no reason why that we can't build a campaign. Our smallest client is 1 seat, and I can grow to hundreds if you like. And so once again, it's really just about a comfortable growth. And someone's lack of preparation should not be my emergency. The last thing I want, John, is someone to call me tomorrow on a Friday and say he needs 20 people by Monday because his call center in the Philippines shut down. You really have to take into consideration the advertisements, the HR, the appointments. And so getting you 20, I might need to interview 60 to 70 people. How long does that take? And so, as I say, we give priority to our existing clients, and people have to give us a certain period of time to breathe a little bit, to do it properly. If not, then we're rushed, and it will be a terrible first start for a client. But we have pre-launch checklists. We set up the computers. We do test calls. And I like to meet certain people in organizations to ask them questions. And a lot of time, as I mentioned, I can open their eyes to other areas of prospecting. You were just mentioning phone calls. Once again, email templates, voicemail templates, second and third touch sort of thing. What happens when we call the company back and do the Richard Circle? And now I'm speaking to your gatekeeper for the second time. And Catherine tells me, thank you, Richard. In the 6 years that I've been working with Small Business Origins, you're the first person to ever give me a verbal and written positive escalation to John. Oh, by the way, this is his anniversary. Here's his direct, extension. And here's 5 more goodies of my company culture to help put that ball into the end zone. And so why call them gatekeepers and why give them such a bad rap? These are the first impressions of Emerald City. As long as you understand the protocol and you can give an excellent first impression with that company name spike, you have a chance. Get them out of that trance. Let them know they're an asset to that company. Let everybody know. And by doing so, you're probably going to increase your odds prior to any sort of contracts, John. And that's not compromising ethics, values, and morals. Man, that's old school. That's the way you and I were raised. And that's the only thing that I know.
Yeah, it really is important. That was something I used to manage ambulance companies full time. And one of the CEOs that I worked for, that was the big thing that he had always gotten to me, because as the director of operations, you were kind of the first thing that a potential client, which was normally a standalone emergency room, would see for the company. So you were the face of the company. Right. And he had always told me, when you're walking into a new facility or a new to us using our services facility, what we always call the gatekeeper is the one that you should make your best friend. That's the one, it's not the doctor who owns the place. It's not the doctors that work there or the nurses that work there. It's the front desk receptionist, the first one that everyone sees when they enter that ER. And you're the first one that they're going to see representing our company when you walk in. And she or he is the one that you should bring lunch or dinner to or a gift to and make friends with, because they really do have so much power in their hands to either, as you stated, put you in direct contact with that owner, that CEO, that founder, or to completely stop you and block everything that you're trying to do. And without, usually going through some sort of sleazy way of getting it, you're not going to get through to the person you're trying to reach without making friends with that person. And you're right. It's good practice to just be a good person. That's all you have to do. I love the educational side of everything you've brought to this podcast today. I think anyone who is listening that does any type of sales, I know I've already got my notes mentally that I'm going to go write down as soon as we're done with this show, because there are things that I have learned that you've said. And then there are things that I have just now learned for the first time today that you've said. So I absolutely love that. Are you guys on social media or anywhere that I can go and kind of follow your company, see what it is that you're doing, get in touch with you easier, and maybe continue my education through the things that you're putting out?
Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough. Very generous. My first suggestion is to buy a first class plane ticket and come fly down here and come hang out with me. But
reason to go to Costa Rica. Check. I'll send that one to my wife.
We call them bomberos down here. So you'd fit right.
Oh yeah.
And so
I actually have a sticker on my helmet that's exactly what it is the candy skull, and then underneath it, bomberos.
Bomberos,
yep.
Por supuesto. We also have an exceptionally large Facebook fan page of about 113,000 individuals. And so when this goes live, you have a bunch of new fans, of course, your Bombero fans, but I can't thank you enough. I really enjoyed my time today. You do a wonderful podcast. You get right in there. And, I'm a big fan, and I'm really looking forward to watching more of your episodes.
Absolutely. No, it was an amazing episode. And yeah, man, we will put all of those links to the company and everything else in our show notes. So, Richard, thank you for being a guest, but listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Small Business Origins. You know the drill. Every single week we have a new episode, and every single week I say the same thing to you. We could not do this thing without you as a listener, because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to be here. So thank you so much to all the hardcore fans out there who tune in every single week. And if you don't tune in every week and you're behind a few episodes, that's okay. There are plenty of them for you to listen to. Head over to www.smallbusinessorigin.com, and we've got all the episodes listed there. You can find your favorite listening platform and go back to one of your favorite episodes to start from, all the way up back until you get to this one you're hearing right now. But that's going to be it for us. It's another week and another episode, another great entrepreneur telling their story. And as always, stay beefy, my friends.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Small Business Origins.
I love an origin story.
If you like what you just heard, leave us a review, subscribe, and share with a friend.
You guys, check this out.
They're going to love it. You're going to love it.